What up, what up, what up, Hype Squad? It's your boy Lucrecio coming at you with another video. And if you're new to the page, welcome to exceedthehype.com. To join the Hype Squad, all you got to do is click subscribe. All right, so today's video is about the Houston Rockets. So I waited a while to make this actual video because I really believed that the Rockets were going to come down. We're going to make something happen with this Carmelo Anthony thing. We're going to add him to the mix that Houston has going on, and that would push them over the edge or whatever. But we've heard reports today that the Carmelo trade just may not be in the works for the Rockets. Even though they're trying to, they just don't have the pieces and they don't have the necessary third parties necessary to make the trade happen. There's rumors about him going to Portland and things of that nature, which he would be okay with Portland, but I would much rather him with Chris Paul. So for that reason, we're just going to go ahead and make this video without the Carmelo factor, right? So without the Carmelo factor, I have the Rockets still being one of the, the top 5 teams in the West, top 4 teams in the West, however you want to think about it, but not necessarily the contender that I would have had them if Carmelo Anthony was there, which I'm sure everybody can understand. So let's talk about the Rockets as currently constituted, right? The Rockets are really strong at the guard position. First of all, they added Chris Paul. He was their big offseason acquisition this year. They added Chris Paul to the fold. What an acquisition that is. One of the best players. They had James Harden, who was somebody who was an MVP. Top 2, came in second place for the MVP trophy behind Russell Westbrook, of course. And then they have Eric Gordon, the 6th man of the year. Somebody who could have been a fringe all-star with other teams for many years. So as you can see, that's a very strong 3-headed monster from the guard position that the Rockets are bringing to the table. Plus, they have some young players or whatever that they're going to try out and see what they can get out of those guys. But their main guards or whatever that they're going to be playing for most of the minutes are very strong. That's the first thing that pops up when you talk about the Rockets. Then you have to think about the organization, right? So they have probably one of the best GMs. He's definitely the most trend-setting GM in the league in Daryl Morey. He's somebody who just sets the trends, as I said. He was one of the first guys to start these horrible poison pill contracts to steal people's restricted free agents away. He has a out-of-the-box approach when it comes to attracting free agents. And then when it comes to identifying free agents or possible trades or whatever, he has an out-of-the-box approach to that too. He has an out-of-the-box approach to everything. Approach to building talent, approach to compiling talent, approach to everything, approach to basketball. The Rockets were the first team, or one of the first teams, to use their D-League team to invoke, a wild strategy or whatever that they're slowly working into their actual team. So the Rockets are a team full of trendsetters, basically. And then you have to go to the coach, D'Antoni. D'Antoni was, there's been fast-paced offenses prior to the Phoenix Suns or whatever, but D'Antoni is the face of 7 seconds or less, the face of like those fast-paced, pace and space type game plans, offensive systems, or whatever the case you want to call, whatever you want to call them. D'Antoni is the face of that, all of that stuff. From his work overseas to here, he's the face of it, and he's the Rockets coach. So let's start it off with James Harden. Started off right at the top with the 2-time runner-up MVP, James Harden. So what can you really say about James Harden? He's somebody who's going to be an MVP candidate every single year going forward. He just is. He's somebody who can give you 30 points, and this last season he proved he can give you 10 assists or 11 assists. Which is really amazing if you really think about it, considering this was his first year trying to play the point guard position. He's always been a very good passer and a good decision maker, a high basketball IQ guy. I personally don't love his game all that much, just because I hate all the dribbling. Like, I much prefer somebody to get into their move, if you have a quick first step or whatever the case may be, to get into it. I don't love all the dribbling. Ever since Steve Francis was with the Rockets and there was all the ISO ball and all the dribbling and all that stuff, that kind of turned me off from that style of basketball, right? But that's just personal preference at the end of the day. James Harden is an amazing player. He's somebody with a high basketball IQ, like I just said, and he's somebody who can just play and out, get buckets. He can score from anywhere on the court. One other thing I don't like about James Harden is the fact I feel like the refs favor him a lot. Every time he goes to the basket with that gather he does or whatever, it seems like he gets a whistle every single time, and it kind of wears on me when I'm watching the game. But once again, it's personal preference, because obviously that's a good thing, because he's getting to the free throw line for easy points. So James Harden has a very, it looks like an old man game or whatever, but James Harden is obviously one of the best players in the whole entire league. Absolutely an amazing player. He's a better athlete than people think. You see him a couple times a year dunking on people or whatever with like ferocious dunks and stuff. James Harden is just an amazing player, good for the NBA, and definitely a good leader for that team. So that's James Harden. Let's talk about Eric Gordon for a second. Eric Gordon, somebody who kind of bounced around a little bit so far. Well, not bounced around. I don't want to make it seem like he's just been going from team to team to team to team to team. He's played for 3 teams so far in his career. And I really respect the heck out of Eric Gordon, because he was one of those blue chipper, super freshman type guys or whatever. One of the best basketball players in the country. He comes to the NBA, he goes to the Clippers, and he's injured a lot. Then he gets traded for Chris Paul along with some other guys, and they go to New Orleans, and he kind of fades from relevancy for a couple years, right? People kind of forgot all about Eric Gordon. But then again, like I said, Daryl Morey paying attention, he was like, look at this talent, everybody's sleeping on this talent. Let me get Eric Gordon over here to Houston and have him play a 6th man role. And boy, was that a great idea. He's obviously 6th man of the year because he's too good of a player to be coming off the bench. But in the current situation, and because of his good attitude, he was able to accept that role, which ended up being very, very good for the Rockets. He got 6th man of the year, and he was just a weapon. Once again, when you bring somebody who's like a star, who's supposed to be a star in this league, an all-star, and you bring him off the bench, he's playing against the second unit of the other team, he's gonna torch them easily. Like, I don't know why more people, this is the whole Ginobili thing, right? Ginobili it's hard to say, he was one of the best players in the world or whatever, and the Spurs brought him off the bench. He comes into the game and he's torching the other team's second unit easy. Like, I don't know why more teams don't incorporate this into their offense, but for some reason they don't. So Eric Gordon is just a huge contributor. He can shoot. He's deceptively quick. Like, he doesn't look quick when you watch him play or whatever. He doesn't look that quick, but he gets past his defender pretty easily. Like, when you really watch him play, he does not have any trouble getting past the defender. So, like I said, he's deceptively quick. He can finish at the rim. He's deceptively athletic. Even though he's undersized, he plays pretty, he plays like he's 6'6" or whatever. So, once again, I really respect Eric Gordon. I love the fact that he was able to incorporate himself into this team. He didn't pout. He didn't complain about anything. He accepted the role and embraced the role right away. And it obviously paid dividends for this Rockets team with their success in this past year. Let's talk about Chris Paul, their other super guard. Chris Paul was their big free agent. Well, he wasn't a free agent. He got acquired through a trade, but he was their big addition this offseason. They traded him for a bunch of pieces. I mean, Pat Beverly and some other guys or whatever. I think Montrezl Harrell or whatever, who gave them some good minutes when Clint Capella was injured this past season. So I don't want to minimize that. and two other players or whatever. So this is the part that I'm really curious about how this is going to work. So we had James Harden, one of the highest usage rates in the NBA last year. Played point guard, averaged 11 assists last year. He also averaged around 5 turnovers. So we have a guy who had the ball a lot last year, and then we're relieving him of those duties and taking him back off ball. Even the year before, when he wasn't playing point guard, he still had a pretty high usage rate. He did not play off ball that much because he was playing with Pat Beverly. Pat Beverly, though he's a good player at the point guard position, he's not necessarily a good point guard. You don't want Pat Beverly necessarily being your offense initiator, right? So even though he wasn't playing point guard the season before, he still had a very high usage rate. It's interesting to think about how exactly is Chris Paul just gonna take that over. Like, is he just gonna come down court and pass it to James and go stand in the corner? I doubt it, right? Chris Paul is he's an old school point guard. He's somebody who's used to having the ball for most of the possession. He's passing it when he's getting you into position to finish, right? He's not necessarily giving you the ball so you can dribble for 7 seconds and then take a contest. You know what I mean? So I still just have to watch and see. Once again, D'Antoni does run an actual offensive system. So it's just going to be very interesting to see how that's going to work. But obviously, Chris Paul is one of the legendary point guards in the NBA history. He's somebody who's always going to have a very high assist to turnover ratio or low assist to turnover ratio, minimal turnovers, a lot of assists, a lot of good decisions, a lot of pace setting, a lot of offensive play calling. You know what I mean? He's a coach on the floor. He's one of those control freak type point guards. And it's just going to be very interesting, a ruthless competitor as well. It's just going to be very interesting, that dynamic between him and James Harden. So we'll see how that goes. However, if it goes well, the Rockets are going to be very good, because those are going to be two guys that are very difficult to contend with on a night-to-night basis. And then their change of pace guard going to be able to come in and junk things up even more for those guys. So I'm just curious to see how this is gonna mesh together. Let's talk about some of their other players. You also have Clint Capella. I like Clint Capella a lot. I think he's a very modern center, to say the very least. He's a very modern center. He does everything that you want your center to do in today's NBA. He'll get you some rebounds. He's very, very active. He never stops moving on offense. He's always either setting the screen or rolling or moving. He's just all over the place. And that's what you want out of a center in today's NBA. On defense, he can protect the rim and he can get you rebounds. He's not somebody who can necessarily shoot and open. He's not going to be a pick and pop type center or whatever, which is fine. You typically don't need your center to be able to do that. And some of his pick and roll coverages and things of that nature are going to have to improve. But that's something that comes with time and comes with, more reps or whatever. So I don't worry about Clint Capella at all. I think he's going to be very good. And I think next to Chris Paul, we will see him even take a step forward. I think Clint Capella will be a lot better this year just because of Chris Paul's presence. Chris Paul, kind of the coach on the floor, getting them into better positions, even though he gets in good positions anyway on the floor, but as far as with his movement and activity or whatever. But I think Chris Paul can kind of channel that in an even more effective way. So I think Clint Capella will get a lot better playing next to Chris Paul as well. You also have Trevor Ariza, another wing player who's a great defender, a 3-and-D guy. One of the guys, even though the 3-and-D guys have been around, but Trevor Ariza, in my opinion, was really one of the guys who really, really drove the point home on how important that position is. It's so important to have a couple guys who are like 6'6" to 6'8" or whatever, who can lock down on the perimeter, who lock down an offensive player on the perimeter, and who on offense can knock down a corner 3-pointer at, about 40%. You know what I mean? Like, he is really one, because when he played for the Lakers, he was so vital. Now, he's never going to get all the praise. He's never going to get all the accolades. He's not going to be an all-star. He's not going to be, defensive player of the year. He's not going to be nothing, really. Like, I don't want to say nothing, but he's not going to really be nothing. He's not going to get any kind of accolades in the NBA, but he was so incredibly vital to that Laker championship that he won with the Lakers. Every team he's played for, especially towards the second half of his career, he's been so incredibly vital to what they do. He's a player. He's one of those players that you absolutely need. And I think he really showed NBA GMs and NBA coaches just how important those 3-and-D guys are. I really think Trevor Ariza is one of the main guys, because he is so freaking important and he makes such a huge difference on the floor. Ryan Anderson is somebody who I wonder if he will be there. The Rockets do want to get rid of him. The problem is the same poison pill contract that Daryl Morey used to get him is the same reason Daryl Morey can't get rid of him. He makes $20 million a year for somebody who is basically only a stretch 4, can shoot threes from distance, and that's about it, right? He just got done in by his own poison pill contract, really, with Ryan Anderson. They've been trying to offload him all off season, and it doesn't work, because nobody wants a stretch 4 who is one-dimensional. Because Ryan Anderson is not going to get you money. He's not going to get you buckets in the post. He's not going to get you a lot of rebounds. He's not going to do much but shoot threes, right? It'll be very deep, impressive threes, but all he's going to give you is 3-point shooting. So I'm curious to see if they will be able to offload his contract, but honestly, it is doubtful at this point that they're going to be able to get rid of that contract. The Rockets also made 2 defensive acquisitions this offseason. One of them was PJ Tucker. Like, you know him from the Phoenix Suns and then the Raptors. With the Raptors, he was supposed to be the big LeBron stopper because he's big and strong and he's still pretty nimble and quick enough laterally. And he wasn't effective against LeBron like most people knew. But that's what Toronto hyped themselves up to believe. And then they also added Luke Mabamute. Obviously, I apologize if I said his name incorrectly. Who is another, somebody who can play the 4, but is also versatile defensively. He can't shoot that well, but I feel like he's going to be, defensively, he's going to help them a lot. I think both of these players are going to help them a lot. Now, they're not Durant stoppers, or they're not LeBron stoppers, or whatever ridiculous, title you can add to them or whatever, but there's very solid defenders who can guard 2 through 4 or whatever, or at least both forward positions at the very least, and guard them pretty well. And I think that's going to be very important, because one thing I do have to admit about the Rockets last season, they were surprisingly, I don't know the defensive numbers. I'm not going to sit there and look up the defensive advanced stats for last year or whatever, but just from watching the games, like a team that's a D'Antoni team who you expect all offense and all quick shots and just giving it up on defense, just trying to outscore the opponent, I thought at times the Rockets were pretty solid defensively, especially in high stake games against good teams. I thought when they wanted to lock down in the half court sets defensively, I thought they did a pretty good job. That's just my opinion. So to add more wing defenders and guys who are versatile defenders who can also guard the post or whatever will help them out quite a bit. And they brought back Nene. So ultimately, I believe the Rockets will end up being one of the top teams in the Western Conference. Obviously, they're going to be fighting it out with Minnesota, though, in my opinion. In my opinion, the West is going to go Golden State. It's going to be San Antonio, because San Antonio, no matter what, there are always at least 2 in the West. Then you have to throw OKC. I think OKC is going to have a good season. I think Paul George is going to have a really, really good season, a good coming out season again. And then Russell Westbrook is still going to be great. I think Minnesota is going to be the surprise. I think Minnesota is going to jump a lot of teams. I think they're going to improve quite a bit very quickly. And I think they're going to jump a lot of teams in the West. So I give the 4th seed to Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to do very well this year. Once again, they're not going to be that dependent on Andrew Wiggins because they have Jimmy Butler there. Jimmy Butler is going to lead their defense. Hopefully, Cat will improve under the new coaching and will anchor that defense. So I think defensively they'll be a lot better. They have a point guard that's a little bit less limited. So I think Minnesota is going to be a lot better. I'll just leave it at that. So I think the Rockets are going to be fighting with Minnesota for that 4th seed. But I think the Rockets are going to be right in position. All right, so let me know if you agree with my assessment of the Rockets down below in the comment section. If you agree or if you disagree. If you enjoyed this content, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new to the page. All right.